Under the blistering sun of the Wild West, the air in Dry Creek carried the kind of heat that made tempers flare and patience run thin. It was the sort of day when dust clung to your skin like a second layer and every sound seemed sharper, every gaze more suspicious. That afternoon, a crowd had gathered in the center of town, drawn by the promise of drama, of judgment, of something to talk about over whiskey later. In the middle of it all, bound and pale, was Clara Mason, barely 20 years old, her boots scuffed, her dress streaked with dirt and sweat. She stood accused of stealing a silver pocket watch from the general store, and in this town, an accusation often meant the same as a verdict. No trial, no chance to speak, just a sentence carried out in front of whoever happened to be watching. Two rough-looking men seized her by the arms, their grips like iron, and without hesitation tied her ankles with coarse rope. The knot was pulled so tight it burned against her skin, and before she could protest, she was hauled upward, her head dropping toward the ground as the blood rushed mercilessly to her face. Her long dark hair swung toward the dust, tangling in the wind, her vision swimming with the sudden change. The crowd muttered, some with cruel smiles, others with uneasy frowns, but not one voice rose in her defense. To them, she was just another thief, and this was just another day's justice. The wooden post she hung from bore a crude sign, "Thief," scrawled in thick black letters. It wasn't just meant to punish, it was meant to humiliate. The sun bore down relentlessly, baking the street until the air shimmered. Clara blinked hard, her mouth dry, her eyes scanning the faces around her for even a glimmer of kindness. She found none. Every face was turned toward her like she was some sideshow attraction. Her head throbbed from the pressure, her wrists strained against the bindings, and each heartbeat seemed to pound in her ears louder than the murmurs of the crowd. Minutes passed, and the air was filled with the creak of the rope, the occasional spit of tobacco hitting the dirt, and the whispers of those watching. Then, a sound cut through the murmurs, a rhythmic clop of hoofs. Marshal Briggs rode into view, sitting tall in the saddle of his chestnut stallion, Dusty. Briggs was a man known for keeping order, but not for showing mercy. His eyes were hidden beneath the brim of his hat, and his jaw was set tight. The crowd parted slightly as he approached, their chatter softening into a tense silence. But while the marshal's arrival was expected, what happened next was not. As Briggs slowed his horse in front of the scene, Dusty stopped dead in his tracks. The lawman gave a small tug on the reins, expecting the horse to move forward toward the saloon or hitching post. Instead, Dusty's hooves dug into the dirt, refusing to take another step. His ears flicked forward, his gaze fixed unblinking on Clara. Briggs frowned, pulling at the reins again, but the stallion stood like a statue, nostrils flaring, tail swishing with agitation. The tension in the air shifted. A few townsfolk noticed the horse's behavior and exchanged curious glances. A child clutched his father's sleeve and whispered, "Pa, I think the horse wants her down." The boy's words rippled through the crowd, carried on the low murmurs, adding an odd kind of unease to the moment. Briggs muttered under his breath and gave another sharp tug, but Dusty merely threw his head, snorting loudly, his muscles tensing. It wasn't fear, it was something else. Something protective. Clara's blurred vision caught the horse's shape, the glint of sunlight on his sleek chestnut coat. Even upside down, even dizzy and aching, she saw the strange intensity in his stance. It was as if the animal knew something the people didn't. Her breath hitched, not from hope, she had none left, but from the strangeness of it. The sun moved lower, but the heat didn't relent. The crowd began to grow restless. There's a certain rhythm to mob judgment, and when that rhythm stalls, doubt can creep in. A few people shifted on their feet, glancing away, uneasy under the stallion's unwavering stare. The marshal dismounted, landing heavily on the ground, and gave Dusty a firm pat as if to calm him. But when he stepped away, Dusty moved with him, keeping Clara in his line of sight, his large brown eyes locked on her. A grizzled voice broke the silence. "Hold on now," it was old Samuel, the blacksmith, pushing his way through the gathering. His hands were rough from years at the forge, his leather apron still streaked with soot. He carried something small in his palm, holding it up for all to see. "That pocket watch you're all talking about. It's been in my shop for over a week. Left by Mr. Dalton when he brought in his rifle for repair. Ain't nobody stolen it." The silver glinted in the light, its surface dulled by dust but unmistakable. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. The tension that had been aimed squarely at Clara now shifted into awkward silence. Faces turned toward the sheriff, toward the men who had tied her, toward one another, avoiding her gaze. Briggs stepped forward, jaw tight, and without meeting her eyes, sliced through the rope at her ankles. Clara fell into the dust with a grunt, the impact jolting through her sore body. Her head spun, her limbs heavy from the blood rushing back through them. As she struggled to sit up, Dusty moved forward, lowering his head until his muzzle was level with her face. His breath was warm, his eyes calm but watchful. Slowly, cautiously, Clara raised her hand and touched the velvety skin of his nose. The crowd watched in silence, as if the gesture carried more weight than any words spoken that day. She didn't smile. There was no joy in the moment, not yet, but her eyes softened. She had been alone a moment ago, utterly abandoned to the cruelty of strangers, and yet here was this animal, standing between her and the world. Briggs cleared his throat, his voice gruff. She's free to go. No apology, no admission of wrong, just the release of a burden he didn't care to carry any longer. People began to drift away, conversations low and uneasy, their appetite for spectacle soured by the uncomfortable truth. Samuel gave Clara a small nod before turning back toward his shop, pocket watch still in hand. The street emptied slowly, until it was just Clara, the horse, and the marshal watching from a distance. She rose to her feet, her legs unsteady, brushing the dust from her dress. Dusty stood quietly, ears flicking at the faint rustle of the wind. Without fully understanding why, Clara began to walk, and the stallion followed at her side as if they had known each other for years. Neither spoke, one could not, the other had nothing left to say. In the days that followed, word of the incident spread beyond Dry Creek. Some claimed the horse had sensed her innocence, that he could feel the truth in a way no man could. Others dismissed it as coincidence, a quirk of animal behavior turned into a tale by idle tongues. But for those who had been there, who had seen the way the stallion refused to move until she was freed, the memory lingered. They spoke of it in hushed voices, adding little embellishments as stories tend to grow, until the horse became a hero in his own right. For Clara, it wasn't about heroism or legend. It was about the strange, quiet moment when, in the middle of her humiliation and fear, something had stood for her when no human would. She left Dry Creek not long after, vanishing down the road with the horizon stretching before her, the sound of hooves beside her marking each step forward. She didn't know where she was headed, but she knew one thing. In a place where mercy was rare, she had found it in the most unexpected of companions. Long after the dust had settled and the heat of that day had faded into memory, the people of Dry Creek still remembered. They remembered the girl who hung upside down beneath a sign that called her a thief. They remembered the chestnut stallion who planted his hooves and refused to move. And they remembered how, for one strange afternoon, the law, the crowd, and the judgment of men all yielded to the silent will of a single horse. In the harsh world of the frontier, that was something worth holding onto.